Hello friends, this is Adam with Movie Guy 365, and in today's world there's a lot of different ways to collect movies, whether it's through physical media like Blu Ray and 4K or digital through Vudu or iTunes. So here are some pros and cons of each format. If you're new to the channel, please hit the like button, subscribe, hit that bell notification. I put out videos every single day. You can also find me over Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at Movie Guy 365, as well as over at the Disney Magic Hour podcast. I will leave a link for that in the description. All right, so wow, just a lot of different ways to collect movies in 2020, and I know it's kind of a hot button topic. I know a lot of people get very defensive, whether you're streaming or you're collecting physical media, and this is not that type of video. This is really a video talking about if you're looking to get into the hobby, or you're already into the hobby, and you just are maybe unaware of some of the real good perks or benefits, or some of the detriments to owning one format over another. I just want to give you 5 of each and really kind of just talk about them. And I know everybody's going to have an opinion, so just go ahead and leave it in the comments below, but just be very respectful, because there are people that collect both formats, and there are people that are looking to get into it, and it's just kind of a thing. At the end of the day, we're all movie collectors, so this is really just kind of like a little more informational, and just to give you some of the ideas of what's good and what's not so good about each of the formats. All right, so first we're going to start with the 5 pros of the Blu-ray format. The first one is going to be the most important one of Blu-ray is you own your content. It's a physical disc, so you actually own it. It's not something that's going to melt away. Remember back in the early DVD days, they tried that DivX thing where you could watch it for like a week or something, and then it would just almost self-destruct on its own. No, you own your content, so that is never going to change. You're going to have it unless extraordinary circumstances just happen to your physical media. You're going to have it for however long you actually want it. So that's probably the most important thing about owning like a physical disc. Number 2 is also kind of goes in hand, is the collectible aspects. Now, I will admit that back in the days of things like VHS, Laserdisc, and even DVD, I think they did it better. I think there were a lot more collectible ways to get these things, whether it was special editions or something like little statues or something that would come with it that would make it kind of a collectible thing. Also kind of out of print, running the risk of movies going out of print was also a nice collectible aspect. Who remembers the days back in DVD when the first print of Little Shop of Horrors came out with the alternate Frank Oz, footage? That was worth a lot of money for quite a bit of time. I think it's still worth a little bit of money over on the eBay. But yeah, like there's a nice collectible aspect, because we as human beings, a lot of us love to actually hold things and like to collect them. So there are, there's that, scratches that itch, and there's a good kind of, catharsis with it. So it's really kind of a fun aspect also of collecting physical media. The number 3 is more of a technical aspect, and this is more of just what you get as far as the quality of product, and this applies mostly to Blu-ray and 4K certainly, but you get higher bit rates. Now what that means is just the overall quality and strength of the image and audio that you're getting for whatever movie you're watching. Physical media can hold more. Streaming still can't quite catch up to that. I'll talk about that later in the streaming, but you undeniably have a higher quality when it comes to Blu-ray and 4K. I know sometimes it feels like it's too close to call, and I know people with really fancy setups would probably disagree or agree or whatever, but really at the end of the day, you can't argue with the data. You get higher bit rates, you get the little edge of the quality, so that's kind of a nice reassuring thing for physical media collectors. My number 4 is going to be the players themselves. Now this is more speaking about 4K and Blu-ray players in slightly different ways. The Blu-ray players, there's a thing called region locking. So when you have movies overseas, let's say they released a Blu-ray over in England or over in Spain, but they never released it here. A lot of times those are going to be region locked to that area. But with 4K, this isn't a problem. Every 4K disc release is universal, so you definitely get I've ordered recently Midsummer, the 4K edition, over from Italy because they never released it here. And there's other movies that have, like there's a lot of movies that are, the John Carpenter films over in England, got one of those over here. Just that they don't always release, universally or internationally at the same time. So if you want something, you're going to have to sometimes import it. It won't be a problem, but that's also kind of a con for Blu-ray is if something's region locked, you're kind of out of luck. Now that also Sometimes applies to Blu-ray 3D, but most times Blu-ray 3D is region whatever. So basically it'll fit in your, if you're here in the States at least, it'll still utilize the player that you have. So it is a pro, but it can be a con depending on which player you have. And if you're still like 100% behind Blu-ray, or if you're going 4K, then it really is dependent on that aspect. The number 5 is longevity. Now I want to talk about longevity for a second, because just recently, within the last couple days, Universal Pictures as well as Warner Brothers did a merging of their facilities. So what that means is, now a lot of people are ringing the death knell of physical media, which is very exaggerated at this point. So they're combining their distribution. So basically what's going to happen is Universal is going to be handling all distribution for Warner Brothers and Universal here in the States. Also, and vice versa for the international market. Warner Brothers will be taking care of that aspect. So in the statement here, as you can see, they basically acknowledge that physical media is still a long-term investment. They're making billions of dollars of this media. I mean, go into DVD. DVD still makes up most of the market share, at least 53-55% of all physical media sales. That's billions of dollars a year industry. It's not going away anytime soon. They're not just going to pull the plug and say, oh, we really want to push people to streaming, so we're going to go ahead and just cut all that off, and oh, everybody's now forced into streaming. There's a lot of reasons they don't do that, which I'll touch on in the streaming aspect. But yeah, physical media is here to stay. It's being, yes, some of it being consolidated? True, but I think it's just really, this is more of a good thing. It's going to provide at least 10 more years, if not longer, of physical media. So I think this is a real positive thing. Blu-ray has been around for quite some time now. It's at least 10 to 15 years, and it looks like it's going to be around for another 10 at least. So yes, there's longevity to it. It's not going away anytime soon. All right, so let's talk about the cons of owning a Blu-ray. All right, now it's time to jump into some of the cons that go with owning physical media, specifically Blu-ray and 4K discs, and there are a few, and they're kind of significant. So let's jump right in. The number one that I actually hear quite a bit is that it takes up space. I understand that one perfectly. I get it. Everybody's living situation is different. Sometimes you live in a small apartment. Sometimes you live, even if you live in a single family home or bigger, you don't have the space or any kind of place to put these things. And not everybody likes to see, movies sitting on a shelf all the time. I understand there's various reasons for that aspect. So that's a big one. I think whenever people talk about why they go into digital, that's usually the one that people go to is the space aspect. So yeah, absolutely, it's definitely something that is a bit of a concern. My number 2 is it's not as accessible. And what I mean by that is recently a lot of the brick and mortar stores like your Walmarts, your Best Buys, your Targets have shrunk down their media section for whatever reason, that they don't sell nearly as much as they did before. And when they do sell, it's usually newer stuff or stuff that's typically a higher volume, your typical Marvel movies or Star Wars or something that they know is going to sell at some point. So it's not as accessible to get in stores as much as it used to be. Not everybody lives near a Best Buy. Not everybody lives near, even Targets and Walmart. Some places have that kind of issue. But you can also you fill in these gaps with online sales like Amazon, BestBuy.com. Those are things that you can absolutely utilize, but not everybody likes to shop online. And a lot of people, believe it or not, don't use the internet, which kind of factors into some of the digital cons later on. But it is a thing that is a real concern, and I typically go everything from Amazon. I go to stores, I do shopping videos every week, so I do those kind of things on a weekly basis. So, but I'm more the exception than the rule. So understandably, accessibility is a problem. The number 3, it kind of goes a little bit with number 2, is finding older titles, out of print stuff. Those are things that can be a concern. Like, what if you want a certain movie, but they don't make it any longer? Are you going to be paying those like exorbitant amount of eBay prices? Or do you take your chances, maybe find them out in a pawn shop or a thrift store or something to that effect? It can be very just unreliable as far as finding out of print stuff. There's a lot of it. There's a lot of movies that I'm still looking for that are out of print that I may either have to get digitally or get some other way. But yeah, it's a problem. For whatever reason, they stopped making them, and they're, believe it or not, they have limited quantities of these things. Sometimes those effects don't show up for years, but a lot of times that does happen. The number 4 is kind of a bummer. I don't know why they implemented this during the first phase of Blu-ray, and it's stayed ever since. But that's region locking. Region locking is kind of annoying. So basically what happens is when you buy a Blu-ray here in the States, you're at region 1. And if you buy it over at the UK, you're, I believe, region 2. And every corner of the globe has like a region. So when these manufacturers and studios print out these discs, a region 3 disc will not play on a region 1 player. So if they release movies internationally that they have never released here, you are kind of out of luck unless you get a region-free player, and that's a whole other topic. But yeah, it stinks. It's not really, I don't know why they implemented that. It's really unfortunate. And to make it kind of slightly better or worse, depending on your viewpoint, 4K players and 4K discs are all region free. They play anywhere in the world. I think I've only heard of one disc that is not able to play on a international player that is readily available. But yeah, they're all region free. I just recently imported Midsummer on 4K. They didn't release that here in the States, and that one I just decided to import from Italy, and that plays perfectly fine on my player. So that's kind of it's kind of a mixture of a con and a pro, but there it is. So that is definitely something that's kind of a notch against Blu-ray. And number 5 is going to be cost. This is a big thing, and I understand it completely. I really do. I've been collecting since VHSs were $100 a piece. Wasn't paying $100 a piece for them, but I was aware of that. And then, of course, when things like Laserdisc came and then later DVD, they were kind of pricey. I remember in my Laserdisc days paying as much as $50 for a single title. And today, utilizing the cost, a brand new Blu-ray will cost $23 for new releases. 4Ks can go up to $35 depending on packaging. So I get it. Not everybody wants to spend so much money on a single movie. Like, how many times are you going to watch the movie? Or, there's a lot of arguments as to why, you would not buy a movie. But that's, I guess, a big kind of factor. And the fact that they keep raising prices on Blu-ray and 4K discs instead of lowering them to compete, that sucks. It's really a thing that it's just honestly should be kind of lower at this point. Especially with the streaming competing, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, it cost is a big thing, and I understand that. Not everybody's a diehard movie collector, but that's also a reason I hear a lot as to why people go over to digital streaming. So all right, enough about that. Let's talk into some of the pros and cons of digital movies. All right, so maybe you're thinking about jumping into digital, or you're already a digital collector. So these are some of the pros and cons of collecting digital. So my number 1 pro is convenience. It's very convenient. It's very easy to buy a movie, to rent a movie digitally. It is probably exceptionally easy. By the time that you go to, I'm going to buy a Blu-ray, and you order it or you go to the store, it's literally a day. It could be like that, or unless you're lucky enough to live next to a brick and mortar. But the convenience, hey, I want to buy, the Green Mile, or I want to buy Joker or Avengers Endgame. It's one click away. You find your digital distributor that you prefer, and you buy it. It's really kind of an easy thing. It's not overly complicated, and it's actually one of the better perks of a digital ownership there. Number 2 is this would have maybe 5 years ago been more of a perk over on the Blu-ray side, but since that has kind of ported over to digital, this is basically digital exclusives. There used to be exclusive stuff on a certain, disc or whatever, but that has come over to digital. So if you are an extras person, you like a lot of extras content, digital is where you want to go for that. So there's stuff that you're going to get as far as you wouldn't get over on your physical media, and if you're especially an extras kind of person. I'm personally, I don't really dive too much into extras, maybe an audio commentary here and there, and even those get ported over as far as exclusives go. So that's one of the cool things about owning digital content is, just a little bit of extras if you're into that. The number 3 is easy access. And that's just basically the easy access. It really is kind of what it sounds like. Sometimes this is a dumb thing, but it's something people consider about, whether you're upstairs, you're downstairs. Let's say you're upstairs and you want to watch a movie and you don't have to go downstairs to pick up your physical copy. You can do it right from any TV, wherever you want, an iPad, an iPhone. The ease of accessibility on digital is very impressive, is very cool. Every day it seems like they're coming up with new ways to implement that, whether it's through a PlayStation, Xbox, a Roku, an Apple TV. I mean, there's so many ways to access it. So conceivably every room in your house that could have like an outlet of some sort you could watch your movie from. Start and you stop. As long as you're on the same account, it'll resume right back then. With the Blu-ray, you're kind of held to which room has a Blu-ray player, which TV. That's all it means by easy access. It's just, you know, for people that want that kind of accessibility, that's a very nice thing to have. Well, I talked about this on the con of the Blu-ray, and that is cost. Cost is very competitive when it comes to digital content. iTunes, Vudu, they have sales all the time, insane amounts of sales, and I think overall it's a good value for what you're getting digitally. You're not paying for the physical aspects or, you know, anything on that end. Sometimes I do feel that they kind of are a little bit unfair as far as the price goes. I think that $20 for a digital movie is a little bit too much. I would like to see that in a $15 range as far as new stuff goes. But if you're asking $20 for a digital copy and then there's a $20 Blu-ray copy, that's not really competitive. It's really just your preference at that point. But as I mentioned, there are tons of sales all the time. So there are good ways to just save up. You usually don't have to wait too long. And whatever you want is probably going to be on sale. So cost definitely has a Blu-ray beat in that aspect. And finally, the 4K exclusives. This is not about the extras. This is 4K exclusives. In our ever-growing or evolving way we consume movies, sometimes a 4K will not arrive on physical media. That seems to happen a lot with some of the smaller releases that, you know, recently Parasite was given a 4K digital exclusive over on Vudu and no physical media selection. Also, some older movies are like that. Beverly Hills Cop just recently got a Blu-ray 3 collection, but on digital it's 4K. Those are some good perks or incentives for people that collect digital to kind of like embrace it as they should. You know, it's unfortunate that they don't give those to the physical media side, but it's still what it is. But yeah, 4K exclusives are really nice. And it's a good way to, you know, if you're really into the quality of the picture and maintaining that with your new TV or whatever it is, you definitely get those extra little bit of benefits. All right, so let's now talk about the cons of digital. Okay, so as we all know, and if you've been around the movie collecting block for a while and know your stuff, you pretty much know what I'm going to say when it comes to cons of actual digital content. My number one is going to be digital rights. Studios at the end of the day want to protect their property, and digital rights is still a very lengthy, kind of confusing aspect of owning digital media. I'm going to touch upon this on my number 3, but really they're very unclear. They're like, what do you actually have right to? And also in your playback aspects, that also has problems. Like some movies, like you can't watch from Vudu over to iTunes if you have both aspects of digital. Some movies won't port over. Studio contracts. It's very confusing. There's a lot of grayness in that area, but digital rights are definitely something that are concerning, and I'll really break into that in my number 3. But yeah, those are something you should be aware of. There's fine print. We don't like to read the fine print on anything, but if you read that fine print, you're going to find some interesting stuff as far as your digital rights go. It's a little bit better over on the video game side. Those digital rights are a little more spelled out, but on movies, they're still a little bit on the gray. So, all right, we'll come back to that in just a moment, but my number 2 is going to be your quality is actually going to be dependent on internet speeds. That is a thing. It's a fact. I talked earlier on the physical media side about bit rates. Bit rates on all digital is lower. It just is. Your quality, like everything from Netflix to Disney Plus, iTunes, Vudu, they all have varying different bit rates, and that's just overall, you know, cleanness of the picture. The quality of the audio is something that, you know, a lot of the audio is really compressed as far as how it goes through on your digital medium. When it comes to physical, you don't have so much that restriction. It's really baked in there. It's part of it. But also the quality, even if you have a good internet speed, I had like up to like 6 months ago, I had like what I thought was good internet speed, but it really kind of rendered digital pretty garbage-like. I had to really soup up my internet to really get good digital content, and it definitely shows. So quality is absolutely dependent on internet speeds, and that's the thing. I feel one of the things that keeps it from being like fully taking over as far as home entertainment goes. Not everybody has a great internet. You've got internet caps. You've got all those kind of aspects of, you know, bit rates and just what's being compressed, what isn't being compressed. There's a lot there that is just dependent on internets. That sucks. Really, it really is. I mean, unless you have a way to physically or actually download onto a drive, then your quality is gonna suffer. So it really kind of is very internet dependent, and it's just very unfortunate. All right, my number 3. This one's I know I'm gonna get comments. You don't own your digital. You don't. You're at the end of the day, you don't own it. I'm gonna go ahead and post a video at the end of this one. I did this one well over a year ago. But if you really read the fine print, and I talked about this in my number 1, you don't own your digital. Like, you long-term rent it. There are contracts, there are stipulations, there are things that you don't have to worry about over on the physical media side. I know, it's like, it's like nobody can come over and take away my movie. But on digital, they theoretically can do it. I've had it done to me. I had stuff on a digital platform over on Flixster before it was shut down, like way before it was shut down. I had a couple digital movies that were actually gone. Like, they just took them off, never refunded me, nothing, they're gone. That can happen. It can happen. It's not widespread, and really it's kind of like, pie in the sky, that type stuff, but it's really a possibility. You don't own it. There's nothing saying, like, if they pulled, let's say Avengers Endgame off your iTunes, assuming you haven't downloaded it, you have no recourse because they have it in their fine print. And I've checked a lot of digital outlets. I've checked Movies Anywhere, iTunes. They pretty much have all that vague saying, like, at the end of the day, we don't have to tell you, and it's gone. Bye. It sucks. I'm with you. I don't like the idea of some outside force controlling my content. I don't like it. I really wish there would be some kind of digital, like, for lack of a better term, digital rights, like I was talking about earlier, that prevents stuff like that. Like, oh, okay, let's say, Disney, it says to iTunes, you can no longer sell our content. You have to pull everything that isn't nailed down digitally. You could wake up one day and that no longer be. It doesn't matter if you paid for it. What you paid for is the availability to have it at that moment. You don't pay for it for, for however long, you think you're gonna live for. It's really not, it sucks. I don't like it. But it's a big thing. So if you really want to hear more on my thoughts on that, definitely check the video at the end of this one, and it'll really kind of explain it out to you. All right, my number 4 is basically you can't share your movies. I know that's kind of an odd thing to include on the list, but just hear me out. I know with digital, there's a propensity for people to like to share their passwords to their accounts. People do it with Netflix all the time. I'm sure there are people that use their Vudu accounts with family members or their iTunes accounts, which are a little bit more difficult to do. But you can't share your digital movies. I know that's not really a big deal, but for some people that is actually important, password sharing, especially since they are going to be cracking down on that. I know Netflix is doing stuff like that, and other streaming services, and I'm pretty sure Vudu and iTunes definitely frown upon it. So that is one aspect that is a bit of a negative, that, hey, you want to see this movie, then you got to be part of my iTunes family, or you got to be part of my Vudu family, and that's kind of a pain. And I know it is, I would say in the future, going to be more strict and more enforced. So just be aware that is something that is probably would be considered a negative in this aspect. And finally, there's a bit of confusion. And when it comes to digital, I kind of wish, and this is one of the things I really was kind of hoping would happen now, and this is one of the reasons I kind of resisted digital for as long as I did. So when you buy a movie over on Vudu, and I mentioned this earlier, usually a couple studios like Paramount and Lionsgate, and then you have, okay, I can watch my stuff on Vudu, but then what's this Movies Anywhere? What's iTunes have to do with it? Why do I have a movie I bought in Vudu over on iTunes? Or why don't I have a iTunes movie over on Vudu, or vice versa? There's a lot of things. Like, I can't go onto one service and have everything I ever bought digitally. It's just, unfortunately, once again, it goes back to contracts, digital rights. It comes to all that stuff. There's quite a few movies that do not show up. Also, did you know if you bought a movie on iTunes, it's not going to be in 4K ever? They don't have the rights from Disney to own a 4K content. So if you bought your $20 Avengers Endgame and you're thinking, oh, I'm gonna watch this in 4K, you kind of can't. At least on the iTunes platform. Now, it should transfer over to, for example, over to Movies Anywhere, and it should be in 4K, but it may not be. And that's confusing. That's very confusing to a lot of people. You just bought your new 4K TV. You want to try it out, and you may not know those things. And it's just there's nothing really spelling all that out for you. It's really, you're going to have to learn it either by trial by fire or do some extensive research. Movies don't often cross-platform. and everything you buy over here will not show up over there. It can be very confusing, but with physical media, everything is consolidated to my shelves. That's where it is. But yeah, it can be a little bit confusing, but at the end of the day, it's just kind of, you just got to learn your way around it, and it's not too bad. Even today, I still have, like, oh, why did this not move over, and then I remembered it was a studio thing. It's dumb stuff like that, but it can be very confusing for the average person. All right, so I'm gonna give you my overall thoughts on the pros and cons. Yeah, so those are my thoughts on the pros and cons of Blu-ray and 4K physical media versus digital. It's really, at the end of the day, it's all preference. It's all what we can afford. It's all what we feel comfortable with doing. And there's really no right or wrong here. It's just you got to be aware of the pros and cons of each way if you decide to get in, or if you're in right now, what you might be getting into or what you're already into. So let me know in the comments below, what are some of the things that I didn't think of that you would suggest as a pro and con versus, Blu-ray, physical media, or digital? Let's try, please, let's keep things, cool in the comments. I know this could be very hot button topic. It can be very heated, but at the end of the day, I think really we just all love movies, and this is just one other way to talk about them. So let me know in the comments below what you think. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. I put out videos every single day. So until next time, this is Adam with Movie Guy 365. I will see you at the movies.